Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Canadian Mortgage Weekly. We're so excited to have you with us this morning. We're joined with Joe Bladdock, mortgage broker in the Barrie Simcoe area. Thanks for joining us this morning, Joe.
Thanks very much, Sam. It's great to be here on today's episode of Canadian Mortgage Weekly. Hi, everyone. And just back at you, Sam. Welcome as well, Sam Thompson. You're a mortgage agent as well. And looking forward to being with you on this episode today.
And I think we have a lot of news to cover in today's episode. It's going to be really awesome. We have some great, coverage. There's been a lot of buzz heading into September 20th, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, there's a lot of buzz heading into September 20th. I know you've prepared a really good presentation for everyone. But before we get into that, just a reminder to all of you who are watching the Bank of Canada right now, there is an interest rate announcement coming up on September the 8th. We'll have live coverage of that interest rate announcement with Sam Thompson and myself here on Canadian Mortgage Weekly. So keep in touch. And if you are interested in some updates with that, also send us a message, but we'll make sure that we get that information out to you and how it will affect your mortgage, line of credit, and other financing products. But yeah, so back to you, Sam. I know we have a great presentation today. Sam, tell us a little bit more about the election coverage that you'll be diving into today.
Yes, so September 20th is election day. It's been, a very tight window than, some previous elections. I don't think many people were expecting this. But with elections and all of the different parties' policies that are coming out, we're really interested to see what each party has to offer in terms of housing policy. So we thought in today's episode, episode 36 of Canadian Mortgage Weekly, we would just cover off what each party has as a part of their housing platform.
That's great. Yes, I'm really actually excited to dive into this. There's probably a lot of folks out there that are wondering what the government has planned for the housing policy. And just to have that information up front, we are hoping that this will help you become a more educated voter and help you with your home search as well.
Absolutely. So let's just go ahead and dive into today's episode.
Yeah, thanks very much, Sam. And yes, if anyone has any questions or comments about today's episode, drop a comment below. We'd love to get back to you on that or a private message.
Absolutely. So as we jump into today's video, again, it's only about 3.5 weeks left until voting. So we do have lots to cover. And as Joe and I were discussing earlier today, there still could be lots of changes. We haven't had any debates, any, party to party arguing. So, I mean, there could be some changes to the policy before, but we will do our best to keep you guys updated on any new changes, any new platforms. And we do want to note as well, we have made this presentation as impartial as possible. So if you think we're swaying one way, we're not. We are just covering off what we know so far from each party and each of their stances on their housing policies.
That's right. And that's really important to us because as we get into the election, it'll be just really good to know what each party's platform stands for in housing. We're going to dive into how much inventory they're planning on and investment that the government's planning on. It's going to be good to see exactly what they're targeting. So yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So first up, we're going to start with the Liberals. So they have quite an extensive platform that was released. If you go to the Liberal website, it's a very extensive breakdown, and they have a lot of changes and new programs that they're adding. And one really important one to note is a new rent-to-own program that will be launched by the Liberals. It's going to commit $1 billion in loans to develop rent-to-own projects, which is a huge amount when you think about, just trying to free up some actual rental inventory and, provide some landlords an incentive to, open up rent-to-own programs because, we know, Joe, that a lot of the times the down payment is the thing that's holding some first-time buyers back. So implementing new rent-to-own programs could definitely help.
It will definitely help. And we've seen a lot of these rent-to-own programs implemented on a private scale in different municipalities. So it's really nice to see the government stepping in to administer some of these programs, because it will bring more legitimacy and transparency, ideally, to this type of program. And yes, we've seen a lot of people be able to get into the market using rent-to-own programs over the years that just couldn't get into the market otherwise. So really excited to see this, but also want to see more details as to how this will be implemented, because there's not very much fine print yet, but it's a good strategy.
Yeah, it'll help with, I know there's a lot of back and forth, some horror stories with rent to own. So as you're saying, it would be good to have some, some government process in the rent to own.
Definitely. But and this new tax-free home savings account that will be introduced by the Liberals as well. This is a really neat financial vehicle, similar to a TFSA or an RRSP. What this is any Canadians under 40 can save up to $40,000 towards their first home. And like an RRSP, the money can be withdrawn tax-free, but different to the RSP, there is no requirement to pay it back, which I know, Sam, has historically been one of those questions that people ask me. Oh, I don't want to take out my RSP because I have to pay it back. Is that true? And then if you're a home buyer, quite often you'll want to know how much you have to pay back and what the monthly payments are and all that. So this is a really good program. And the fact that you can deduct the savings off your, what you invest off your income, that's a pretty good little thing as well. It'll be interesting to see this one come to light.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces with this new account, but it does sound like it could be a more favorable option, because yes, as you're saying, Joe, there, you are able to withdraw from your RRSP through the home buyer plan. But again, as you do have to pay that back, we do get a lot of questions from first-time buyers on what that process is. So being able to save the money and use it without being taxed, with no requirement to pay it back. We'll see, if this policy, comes to effect, what long-term effects that would have with all of our buyers if we see them, suddenly all flocking to this new savings account.
Yeah. But either way, it's a good savings account, and it's encouraging saving for a home, which is really good. The fact that it's called a first home savings account,
right?
It puts it right there, and it's encouraging Canadians to save for their home, and the spirit of the program sounds good to me so far. But yeah, we'll have to see the intricacies of it going forward.
Another thing the Liberal Party has, in their platform for housing is to double the first-time buyers tax credit from $5,000 to $10,000. So again, this is what all first-time buyers are entitled to fill out the year after their first purchase on their income tax form. So this is just another way, to soften some of the cost of buying your first home when you receive some of that money back in the following tax year.
Yeah, that's a really good program. It's been in place for years, Sam. And the fact that they're looking at doubling this, it will really bring a huge benefit to first-time home buyers, because, when you buy your home, you don't really realize this tax credit until almost 6 to 12 months later. So getting that check back later from a tax refund helps out with, maybe an appliance upgrade or whatnot. Yeah. And then going forward here, we all know that buying a home with less than 20% down, we have to buy CMHC insurance, and that can be expensive. CMHC insurance is added to the balance of your mortgage, so it's not felt immediately. So usually it just adds a few dollars to your mortgage payment per month. However, that's still a few dollars, and the Liberal Party's one of their agendas here is to reduce that cost of the mortgage insurance by 25%, and that could add up to thousands of dollars for the for the home buyer that's putting 5% down, wouldn't it, Sam?
Absolutely. I mean, almost every first time buyer that we work with is just aiming for that 5% minimum mark. So again,
Yes.
anything to help soften costs. And again, the mortgage insurance, it's not like the first time buyer tax or anything that's a one-time fee that gets carried over the life of the mortgage because it's added on the mortgage balance. So softening that could have some really good long-term effects as well.
Yeah, it could also even bring down the mortgage payment a little bit there as well, if,
Hmm.
with such a substantial decrease in the mortgage insurance.
Hmm.
Um, so this other one here, investing 4 billion into the Housing Accelerator Fund to help municipalities grow their housing supply faster. This one, I haven't read too much into this one, Sam, but it seems like the Liberal government is planning to fund municipalities, provide funding to municipalities themselves for their own housing agendas, it seems like.
Yes, I believe that this point in their platform was again mainly to just provide additional funds to the municipalities, to help with zoning costs and the construction of newer homes, just so that municipalities themselves can grow faster than the typical turnaround time, because we do know that inventory has become somewhat of an issue when we're looking at the current housing market and where we're at now.
Yeah, exactly. And where we're at now leads really well into this other point that's made
Mm,
here about blind bidding. And
yeah.
all year this year, with the housing prices skyrocketing as they have, it's been a lot of blind bidding. We have had a lot of buyers putting in offers, and no one really knows what the previous offer or other offers are. So just to have this transparency could make the housing prices stabilize just a little bit more for our market and make it a lot more transparent for buyers as well.
Mhm.
So you're looking forward to something like this happening if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would bring some comfort to new buyers to be able to see what others have been bidding, making sure they're in an acceptable market rather than unseen bidding wars because no one knows what the previous person has bid.
Exactly.
And the final point of coverage that we have for the Liberal Party is a big one, actually. There's actually proposed a bar on foreign ownership for the next 2 years. So that's anybody purchasing a home who currently doesn't live in Canada, or is not planning on, moving to Canada and is buying the home for, say, an investment purpose. So a bar on that for 2 years would translate to quite a shift in the market, because I know that Toronto's market relies a lot on foreign investors, and it would be quite wild to see one of these policies in effect where there's a complete bar on that process.
Yeah, it would be. And it would be really interesting to see how the market reacts. Will there be a blow to the market, or will there just be a subtle blip? Because
Right.
the idea of foreign ownership has been around, circulating the news media outlets for years now, and it's been a cause of growing concern. However, there has been some professionals in our industry that have said that it's not a big a concern, but there's also people that are saying it is a big concern. So not sure how this would affect our housing market, but the fact is, I think it's a good policy anyway, because um, foreign ownership should not really be encouraged, I don't think, in Canada.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so that wraps up our coverage so far of the Liberal platform. So let's move on to see what the Conservatives are up to, what their plan includes. And we can see right off the bat, their plan is to implement to build 1 million homes in the next 3 years. So they're definitely addressing, a shortage of inventory issue. You can see that that's definitely a prime point. And there's a couple points on how they intend to do this, and one of them was to review the federal real estate portfolio, which is over 37,000 buildings, and release about 15% of that for residential housing. So that's one way that they can meet this mark, but that's a tall order of 1 million homes in the next 3 years.
It is a tall order, but it's also very needed. We've all heard from all our guest speakers earlier this year, all our real estate professionals, that inventory is an issue. So I think that this policy, releasing over 37,000, reviewing 37,000 buildings and releasing 15% to open them up for housing, that's a good thing. It's probably in the right direction. It's really interesting to see this here because 1 million homes would make a big dent in the market.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Again, as you were saying, a lot of the professionals that we've been chatting with, that's been a prime concern for them, is just there's no inventory, or they're at, historic lows with
Yeah.
detached and condos.
Yeah, exactly. The other one is exploring to convert unneeded office space to housing. And I think we're going to see a lot of this in the coming 2021, the fall of 2021, as well as 2022, as there are more workplaces that convert to partial work from home and downsize, or just close up their offices and move to a 100% work from home model. So this will be a source of housing, I think, in the future as well. So it's interesting to see this part of the campaign here.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely something that's come up since COVID, where
Yeah.
office spaces, some have completely shifted to work from home, and they don't have intentions of going back. So again, I think we see in a couple of the different parties, their plans are to capitalize on that vacant space.
That's right.
And the last point for implementing these homes is also encouraging Canadians to invest in rental housing. So what they're planning on doing is extending the ability to defer your capital gains tax when you're selling a rental and reinvesting into rental housing again. So just to, again, keep more inventory for rental units as well, because we've seen, Joe, that, purchasing a home isn't the only area that's been affected by low inventory and high prices. We've also seen the rental market has become harder to find a place, and the prices are quite expensive. So again, encouraging Canadians to invest further into rental housing could help the overall market for sure.
It will definitely, and as more Canadians would do that, developing more additional rental units, that will be good to make sure we have enough housing for Canada. And deferring capital gains, I mean, that sounds like a lot of investors will like to hear that statement there. So if you're an investor, keep touch on that point there. But in terms of foreign investors, as we covered in the Liberal Party slide, it looks like we have a similar campaign model for foreign investments here, for banning foreign investors who are not living or moving to Canada for at least the next 2 years, and instead encouraging investment in purpose-built rental housing affordable by Canadians. So kind of going back to what you were saying, Sam, with one of the first points there about encouraging rental units, but also very similar idea to the Liberals.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, as we were saying, it'll be interesting to see, if either of these parties are elected, and we see this bar on foreign investors, what that has in store for, heading into 2022 without that, supply of buyers. And another big point here that we're seeing is the ability, they are implementing to remove the stress test on renewing your mortgage with another lender. So this is huge because, many renewals of your mortgage all had to endure the same stress test as new purchases. And we saw that did, it did shorten a bit of the equity that you built up. You thought you qualified for more, but that stress test does cut that down a bit. So removing the stress test when you're renewing with another lender also builds a bit of, competition in the market that, we could see some market shifts with lenders, offering more competitive rates on a refinance.
Absolutely. Good point, Sam. Love to see this one implemented because, like you're saying, it's not fair that existing homeowners are subject to a stress test to just simply stay in the market. And then the last item here with the Conservative platform agenda on housing policy is to encourage 7 and 10-year term mortgage loans. And that is a really interesting shift because the lenders like to focus on 5-year terms specifically. And a lot of consumers prefer 5-year terms simply because it's a good middle of the road term in terms of 5 years is about that amount of time that you need to determine whether you want to move or stay and what you want to do when you stay in your home. But 7 to 10 years is really extending the life of that first mortgage term. But in exchange, it looks like the conservatives are proposing reducing or eliminating the stress test for first-time home
Right.
buyers in this market. So that's an interesting one here, because it will make it a lot easier for first-time home buyers to get in, but it's also locking them in for a very long term of a mortgage.
That's right. Yeah. And we'll see. Um, typically 7 to 10 year mortgages also aren't necessarily the most competitive rate on the day. As you were saying, a lot of lenders focus on that 5-year term. So,
Yes.
we'll see if it actually pans out that, the rates are still enticing enough to get in, maybe without a stress test, but at potentially a higher rate than a 5-year term. So we'll see what the effects of that are. But that's, again, a creative solution that we haven't seen in any of the other platforms for sure. So moving on now, we have some coverage for the NDP. So again, not entirely different from the conservatives, but it looks definitely more achievable that they've proposed to build 500,000 homes over the next 10 years in hopes to have half of them done within 5 years. So again, a huge proposal towards the inventory issue and just providing, additional inventory for buyers to actually enter into the market.
Yeah, this is a really good, again, item providing more inventory for the market. It's much needed. And with it still being generally a seller's market right now, additional inventory will even things out. So good to see NDP focusing on the inventory side of things. And they're also focusing on this other point here where they will actually waive the federal portion of the GST, HST on the new construction of new affordable rental units. So that's really good because as new rental units are created, there are expenses that investors see. So just waiving the tax on that is encouraging development of the rental units. So by doing that, it seems that the NDP does want to encourage landlords and investors to create rental units through tax credits or reducing the tax.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting take for sure on adding a boost to new rental units. And the NDP also do have a stance on foreign buyers, but it's not a complete bar. Instead, they're looking to instate a 20% foreign buyers tax to any non-Canadian citizens or non-permanent residents looking to buy in Canada. So yeah, it's an interesting difference from, the conservative and liberals, which is just a complete bar, to just upping the taxes that are implemented on those purchases.
Exactly. Yeah. A little bit of a different take on that foreign ownership there. So it'll be interesting to see which one is a better version of this policy, but time will tell to see if anyone actually put this policy into place as well. But moving on to the 30-year insured mortgages, this has been 30-year insured mortgages were in Canada up until approximately, I think it's 2012 when they discontinued 30-year insured mortgages. I could be wrong on my date there. It could be maybe 2013, but reintroducing 30-year insured mortgages will definitely open up a large pool of home buyers, because there are those home buyers that have good incomes, good credit, but just don't have a high enough income to afford a house under the current policy.
That's true. Yeah. This one is actually, again, really exciting in terms of just allowing first-time buyers to get into the market. We could see that, adding those extra 5 years on the maximum amortization, it does give people a decent amount of wiggle room for what they can qualify for. So that would be definitely an exciting change for a lot of first-time buyers for sure.
Yeah.
And moving on to the final point, you can see that they are again matching the Liberals as well by doubling the first-time buyers tax credit from 5,000 to 10,000 as well.
And again, that's a great tax credit. You get that when you file your taxes after you purchase your home. So it's always good to get that tax refund in the mail just a few, like 6 to 12 months after you buy your first home. Well, it's interesting to see these policies here from the NDP. It'd be also interesting to see what we have next year. I think we have the Green Party next.
Yes, we are covering off the Green Party's housing platform. So again, we're seeing it the third time now about building 100,000 affordable rental units over the next decade. So again, a very achievable number to have for over the next 10 years. And again, another focus on building affordable rental units. It seems to be something that we've heard in almost all of the policies, that there is a focus on these affordable rental units.
Yes, and that is good because we definitely need more affordable housing. So it's good to see that each platform has so far a policy for this. And another thing the Green Party has, which is a really interesting initiative, is that they would like to retrofit existing buildings to reduce carbon emissions. So this will be items such as retrofitting buildings to have less carbon emissions from AC units or heating units, or make them more insulated. So they have a better R rating, things like that. So it'd be a good thing to see that, because environmentally that would make a difference for what's happening with the environment.
For sure. Definitely a very Green Party specific policy. I don't know if we'll see any of the other parties focusing too much on that. As we move into the next point, there is a $23.5 billion plan that is going to, or is proposed to build 60,000 support housing units and launch some Indigenous-led housing to build 22,000 units in rural areas. So again, I know from reading through some of the Green Party's policies and their plan, a lot of their stances and position was really going after homelessness and trying to tackle adding new co-ops or support housing. So it makes sense that we're seeing this as a possible policy that they're looking at introducing, just to increase some support housing for for that demographic in Canada.
It is, yes, Sam. Really good to see this, and I'm glad to see an initiative like this on one of the parties in Canada. Something that I think is definitely been lost in the overall housing market news that we've been seeing in the last 12 to 18 months, definitely. And then also another item of topic here for the Green Party is developing units on commercial properties. So, if you've probably driven in some downtowns or cities and seen unused plazas, unused commercial units sitting there vacant. So that's unfortunate, because that's space that could be used for other items. So Green Party does want to focus on developing some of these unused commercial properties.
Yeah. And their final point was something that we had seen them looking that they were going to implement it, but then it seemed that they had backtracked. But I don't know if we fully know where they stand on it. So they potentially do have in their plan to eliminate that first-time buyer tax credit that we mentioned. The NDP and the Liberals are both planning on doubling. So that's just an interesting point. Again, I don't know if they've come to a final decision yet, but it has been listed as a potential.
They did look at potentially eliminating it, but they are reviewing it right now. So we hope they decide not to do that, because it's a useful credit for first-time home buyers. One of those credits you get after you buy your home, which is always nice. can be expensive buying your first home. So it does help out with some of those little costs here and there. As we know, blinds and curtains can be expensive.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And so we can move on now. I think, Sam, you've prepared a review for us that we can review here the top items.
Yeah. So that is the end of the coverage we have for each individual party. But again, it is a lot of information and it is changing, as we see, us getting closer to the election date. So we've pulled out a few points for each of the parties just to sort of round off some of the larger things that we noted from each of their platforms. So when looking at the Liberals, some key points is that new tax-free savings account for first-time buyers under 40, also implementing that 2-year ban on foreign investors and investing, quite heavily into those rent-to-own programs. Those are some really big points that the Liberal Party has that could really, we would see an effect in the housing market.
Yes, those are a good top 3 points there. It'll be interesting to see what they look at doing. And then some key points for the Conservative Party are also adding some inventory that we've seen across a lot of the parties here, and that is adding 1 million homes in the next 3 years, barring the ownership of homes by foreign investors over the next 2 years, and also adjusting the current stress test policy and mortgage insurance policy to reduce the mortgage insurance. So also very interesting and very impactful action items for both parties here so far.
And moving on to the NDP, again, we had seen that they were planning on adding an additional 500,000 homes in the next 10 years. Instead of a bar on foreign investors, just a new foreign investor tax of 20%. And then the really big one, especially for first-time buyers, is reintroducing the 30-year amortization on all insured mortgages. So almost sort of an in-between party where they're adding inventory, but they're also, they're working on sort of the back end to help people get into the market and help free up some inventory that we already have.
Yeah, definitely a mix of policy there across the both sides. So be interesting to see that one come and see what they do if the NDP gets elected. And for the Green Party here, really interesting items here are that they are also considering adding affordable rental units, which is always a good thing in our country to add affordable rental units. An item also that has been not enough, there hasn't been enough of a spotlight, it has not been enough initiative on, and that is co-ops and Indigenous-led housing programs, and that's to end homelessness in those communities and to combat all that. These are really interesting programs that we are seeing come out of the Green Party, and also developing unused commercial units. And as we all know, we've seen those unused plazas. That space can be used for other things. So let's put that unutilized space to use instead of, continually building other spaces.
Yeah. And currently we don't have any information on the PPC platform. But again, as we were mentioning, that a lot of these platforms have potential to change. And we could see maybe new policies implemented from the different parties in the weeks to come leading up to the election. We will keep you guys up to date with any changes that we're seeing, any updates. If we start to see some policies coming out of the PPC, we will for sure let you know and keep you updated on those policies and changes. Absolutely.
That's great. So as we've seen here, those are the key points across all the parties in Canada. Keep in touch with Canadian Mortgage Weekly as we go through and cover Canadian election coverage here on Canadian Mortgage Weekly Live. We'll be covering election news every week over the next few weeks going into the election. And also keep in mind that there is an interest rate announcement coming up on September the 8th. But, as we keep going here, I'd like to remind you all that if you have a comment or a question, leave a comment below or send us a private message on social media. We'd be happy to answer you with your specific financial scenario, or if you're looking to get more information about any of these policies and how they will affect you, Sam or myself can get into that for you. And just a little bit about Sam Thompson as well, so you guys can get to know him a little better. Sam Thompson originally is from Ottawa, Ontario. He moved here to the Barrie area just over a year and a half ago, Sam. So welcome to Barrie. I know you've enjoyed it here. And you know, you got married in Simcoe County here, and so you've been a mortgage agent now for about a year and a half as well. So it's great to see that that you've been helping our clients, and you're doing a great job as well. So if anyone ever has any comments or questions, or even would like to book an appointment with Sam directly, you can feel free to do that as well. And yeah, Sam, it's great to have you on to today's episode.
Yeah, it was great to be on the episode today with you, Joe. And for any of you who don't know, Joe is a mortgage broker in the Barrie Simcoe area. You've been in the industry for over 10 years now. Joe is the rock star drummer of the mortgage world. He lives up in Aurelia. With your family. You've got 2 kids, also definitely a family man. And Joe is the guy if you want to, you know, chat mortgages. He's very passionate about it, and also very knowledgeable about the process and how to get, you know, your mortgage, you know, approved, funded, and processed. So definitely it was great to be on today's episode with you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Sam, and thanks very much for helping create the content as well. And yes, as we end today's episode, thanks for watching today's episode of Canadian Mortgage Weekly. As always, if you have any comments for future episodes, or you know, would like to start your process on your mortgage application, give us a shout on social media, leave a comment below, or call us, or send us an email. And thanks again for watching.